Welcome to this deep dive.
We are really glad you're here with us.
We truly are. And if you are listening to this right now, you have made a really brave choice.
Yeah.
You've carved out time for yourself to explore something profoundly personal and, often incredibly challenging.
Because today we are exploring the decision to heal from sexual abuse.
Right. And because of the sensitive nature of this topic, we want to establish immediately that you are in a safe space.
A completely safe space.
We are not going to be discussing graphic details of trauma. Instead, we are looking closely at the emotional mechanics of recovery.
The internal landscape.
Exactly. The phenomenon of waking up from numbness and that intense paradox of why healing can feel like both a terrifying disruption and a really beautiful awakening.
And sitting down to engage with this topic, it can bring up a really complex wave of physical and emotional reactions.
It really can.
You might notice a tightness in your chest right now,
Well,
or maybe a shallow breath.
or even a sudden urge to just turn this off and walk away.
Yes. Or alternatively, you might feel this quiet, cautious curiosity, or even a profound sense of numbness.
Which is so common.
It is. And whatever your body and mind are doing in this exact moment, it is a brilliant protective response.
It is completely valid.
We're going to move really slowly today.
You hold the reins.
You do. You can pause, you can step away, or you can simply let the sound of our voices be a gentle presence in the room with you.
Our mission today is to break down the concept of healing step by step.
To really look at the internal landscape of a survivor who is standing right on the edge of this decision.
Right. We will explore why people eventually choose to step into the unknown of recovery, what that choice actually feels like in the nervous system, and the resilience required to reclaim your own life.
Because healing is not just a destination.
No, it's an active, ongoing reclamation of your humanity.
And you are choosing to spend this time focusing on your own understanding. That alone is a life-affirming step.
It really is. The very phrase, the decision to heal, implies a level of agency that many survivors feel was stolen from them.
Absolutely stolen.
So deciding to reclaim that agency is monumental.
It is. And when we look at the lived experiences of survivors who have navigated this path, they really don't sugarcoat the reality of what this commitment demands.
No, they don't.
There's a specific reflection from a woman named Eli Fuller that just perfectly captures the immense paradox of this journey.
I have that quote right here. She describes healing by saying, if you enter into healing, be prepared to lose everything.
Which sounds so terrifying at first.
It does. She continues. Healing is a ravaging force to which nothing seems sacred or inviolate. As my original pain releases itself in healing, it rips to shreds the structures and foundations I built in weakness and ignorance. I am experiencing the bizarre miracle of reincarnating more lucidly than at birth in the same lifetime.
That description of a ravaging force is just breathtaking in its honesty.
It really is. It captures the sheer physics of emotional transformation.
When she talks about structures and foundations built in weakness and ignorance, she's describing the coping mechanisms that trauma necessitates.
Right, because a child, or really anyone overwhelmed by abuse, they don't have the neurobiological tools or the physical power to process what is happening in real time.
I can't. So the mind performs this miraculous feat of engineering.
It builds walls.
Walls of dissociation, fortresses of hyper-independence.
And intricate systems of people-pleasing.
Or complete numbness just to ensure survival.
Those structures kept you alive.
They were emergency scaffolding built in the middle of a Category 5 hurricane.
I love that metaphor. Because framing those behaviors as emergency scaffolding fundamentally changes how we view our own survival tactics.
It removes the shame.
It completely removes the shame. The scaffolding did its job perfectly.
The complication arises because, well, you cannot live a vibrant, fulfilling life out on the scaffolding.
No, you're just clinging to the outside of the building.
Exactly. Eventually, to build a permanent, warm, inhabitable home, those emergency structures have to come down.
And tearing down the very things that saved your life feels like a ravaging force.
It leaves a person feeling entirely exposed to the elements.
Which naturally raises the profound question. If the prospect of dismantling that protection is so terrifying, why would anyone willingly initiate the process?
That is the core paradox of recovery right there.
The answer lies in the profound difference between surviving and actually living.
Because trauma creates this state of chronic, low-grade anesthesia.
Yes, it traps the nervous system in the past, constantly reliving the memories.
Or it projects you into the future, making you hypervigilant and bracing for the next disaster.
And in either of those states, the present moment is completely abandoned.
But when the dismantling begins, that anesthesia starts to wear off.
Survivors describe this phase not just as painful, but as a sensory awakening.
One survivor detailed this by saying they were finally appreciating things like the birds, the flowers, and the warmth of the sun on their skin.
Which sounds so simple, but it's monumental.
They realized they could simply sit and read a good book. They noted, "I've woken up. If this hadn't happened, I'd still be asleep."
The contrast between sleepwalking through a life and suddenly feeling the sun on your skin is stark.
Trauma demands so much cognitive and emotional energy just to maintain that baseline of survival.
There is simply no bandwidth left to process joy or beauty.
Right. Waking up means the bandwidth is returning. It means the capacity to inhabit the present tense is finally coming online.
But I want to pause here. For anyone listening who hears that and thinks, I don't feel the sun on my skin, I just feel exhausted.
It is vital to remember that this awakening doesn't happen overnight.
It is a gradual, sometimes halting progression.
You are slowly becoming emotionally more open. The numbness begins to recede in patches.
And as it recedes, you don't just discover vulnerability, you discover an unshakable resilience.
Another survivor, reflecting on this process, realized the sheer magnitude of what they had endured and survived.
They observed that it would take something monumental to flatten them now.
They had touched the bedrock of their own strength.
Healing strips away the illusion of fragility. It grounds you in the indisputable fact that you are still here.
And you are far stronger than the trauma that tried to break you.
That arrival at the bedrock of your own strength is a powerful destination.
But the starting line, the catalyst that pushes someone to finally make the commitment to heal, looks remarkably different from person to person.
It rarely happens as a calm, logical decision made on a quiet Sunday afternoon.
The realities of how survivors arrive at this precipice are messy. They are diverse and they are deeply human.
The turning point often arrives when the pain of staying the same finally outweighs the terror of changing.
Sometimes this realization dawns slowly, like a shift in the seasons.
And other times, it is an abrupt, violent collision with reality.
The diverse paths to this moment reveal how the mind and body eventually collude to demand healing.
Let's consider some of the different catalysts survivors describe in our sources.
For a young girl, the catalyst was institutional. She was mandated by a court to attend therapy after her abusive stepfather was turned in.
And for a 25-year-old woman, the catalyst was a culturally celebrated milestone. It was marriage.
She found that the emotional and physical intimacy she experienced before the wedding vanished entirely the moment she became a wife.
That specific trigger of marriage highlights such a cruel irony of trauma.
It really does. We often assume that reaching a place of safety and love will automatically bring peace.
But in trauma psychology, there is a phenomenon where the brain, upon finally sensing true safety, decides it is now secure enough to release the suppressed trauma.
The intimacy of marriage involves physical proximity, vulnerability, and a massive shifting of identity.
And for a nervous system that is wired to view vulnerability as a life-threatening liability, safety itself becomes a trigger.
The disappearance of intimacy wasn't a failure of her relationship. It was her body sounding the alarm that it was finally safe enough to process the past.
Another profound mirror effect occurs in parenting.
Yes, we see the story of a mother who began to feel intensely destabilized when her own daughter reached the exact age she was when her abuse began.
Watching her child navigate that specific developmental milestone brought the suppressed memories rushing right to the surface.
The contrast between her daughter's innocence and her own childhood reality became impossible to ignore.
Similarly, another woman made the decision to heal while standing at the funeral of her abuser.
The definitive physical end of the threat allowed her mind to finally stop bracing for impact.
She could begin the work of recovery because the source of the danger was definitively gone.
And then there are the moments where the body simply forces the issue, refusing to carry the secret any longer.
Like the account of the woman who actively avoided seeking help for years.
She relied heavily on avoidance and control. The dam didn't break until she was hospitalized for severe anorexia.
Her physical collapse was the ultimate intervention.
She articulated it perfectly. She didn't start dealing with the trauma until she could not deal with it.
It forces us to examine the nature of choice in the healing journey.
Does it always feel like a conscious, empowered decision?
Or does it often feel like a mandate handed down by our own collapsing defense mechanisms?
It often feels like a mandate. One survivor described healing not as a matter of choice, but as a compulsion.
They posited that every human being possesses an innate compulsion to grow, to be whole, and to seek relief from pain.
This is a deeply comforting neurobiological truth.
Even when you feel irreparably broken, there is a fundamental biological imperative within your cells and your psyche that is actively fighting for your integration and wholeness.
It is the psychological equivalent of a physical wound stubbornly fighting to knit itself back together.
Demanding attention and care.
And their biological drive toward wholeness sometimes requires an external mirror to shatter the illusion that our coping mechanisms are still working.
There is a compelling anecdote about a survivor who believes she was executing a flawless performance of normalcy.
She thought she had compartmentalized the trauma perfectly.
Then, a close friend confronted her with devastating honesty.
Her friend said, "I don't trust you. I never feel you're telling me the truth. I can't trust you with my feelings because I don't know what you're doing with them."
Hearing those words from a trusted friend would induce a profound somatic shock.
The survivor described feeling as though her friend had crawled inside her head and seen the frightened, disconnected reality hiding behind the mask.
She realized that her brilliant survival strategy of emotional detachment was now actively destroying the connection she desperately craved.
The performance was failing.
That painful confrontation provided the exact mirror she needed.
The friend put words to the lifelong feeling of disconnection, and that shattering of the facade was the direct catalyst that pushed her into therapy.
The catalyst can also emerge from the darkest depths of grief.
There is the tragic reality of a woman whose motivation to begin her healing journey was the suicide of her younger sister.
Facing that profound loss, the survivor realized the lethal nature of unhealed trauma.
She saw the trajectory of the pain and made a conscious, survival-driven decision.
She needed to arm herself with the psychological tools necessary to ensure she would not meet the same fate.
She chose to face the darkness because the alternative had just proven to be fatal.
That is the fierce survivalist edge of the decision to heal. It is a refusal to be consumed.
We also see this eruption of truth happening in environments that seem completely detached from personal emotion.
Like the 20-year-old college student who decided to write a psychology research paper on the after effects of incest.
She approached it as a purely academic exercise.
Probably a subconscious way to interact with her trauma from a safe intellectual distance.
But the material breached her defenses.
She found her emotions erupting unpredictably. The academic distance vanished, replaced by a visceral, overwhelming rage.
The emergence of that rage is a critical milestone.
She described wanting to annihilate her abusive grandfather, expressing a deep, violent anger.
In the context of trauma recovery, anger is a vital sign.
It is a protective emotion.
It is the part of the psyche that knows an injustice occurred, that knows the child deserves safety, respect, and protection, and was denied it.
For years, survivors often turn that anger inward, transmuting it into toxic shame, depression, or self-harm.
When that anger finally points outward, directing its heat toward the person who actually caused the harm, it is a massive structural shift toward health.
Even if it feels completely destabilizing at the time.
The rage is the fire that begins to burn away the internalized shame.
It is the self-advocacy coming back online.
This search for truth and authenticity also appears in highly structured spiritual lives.
There is the example of a Carmelite nun who found deep meaning in her vocation but was plagued by a lack of trust in her own motives.
She realized that until she addressed her history of sexual abuse, she would never know if she had chosen the convent out of genuine spiritual calling.
Or if she was using it as a sanctioned hiding place, a retreat from a world that felt fundamentally unsafe.
She needed to heal in order to trust the integrity of her own life choices.
Whether it is the nun seeking the truth of her vows, the student overwhelmed by righteous anger, or the woman responding to her sister's tragic death.
The common denominator is the point where the pain of maintaining the charade becomes heavier than the terror of facing the truth.
And when one person makes that choice, it inevitably impacts the ecosystem around them.
The courage to speak, to write, to confront, or simply to change breaks the silence.
It provides a blueprint for others who are still waiting in the dark.
That ripple effect is beautifully captured in a poem by Lucille Clifton titled "To My Friend Jarena."
The imagery she uses provides a profound map of this internal shift.
The poem reads, "Listen, when I found there was no safety in my father's house, I knew there was none anywhere.
You are right about this, how I nurtured my work, not myself, how I left the girl wallowing in her own shame and took on the flesh of my mother.
But listen, the girl is rising in me, not willing to be left to the silent fingers in the dark."
And you are right. She is asking for more than most men are able to give, but she means to have what she has earned: sweet sighs, safe houses, hands she can trust.
The progression in those lines is a masterclass in the psychology of survival and reclamation.
It begins with the absolute devastation of the primary attachment. When I found there was no safety in my father's house, I knew there was none anywhere.
That is the core cognitive distortion that trauma implants in a child's mind.
If the very people designed by nature to protect you are the source of the danger, the entire world is categorized as a threat.
The foundation of trust is entirely absent.
From that absence of trust, she outlines her specific coping mechanisms. How I nurtured my work, not myself,
She channeled her survival energy into external achievement.
creating a highly functional, untouchable exterior while abandoning the wounded inner self.
How I left the girl wallowing in her own shame and took on the flesh of my mother.
She dissociated from the vulnerable child she was, adopting the patterns, the silence, or perhaps the complicity of the adults around her.
It is a perfect description of severing connection with the self in order to survive the environment.
But then the biological imperative, that compulsion to be whole, takes over.
But listen, the girl is rising in me, not willing to be left to the silent fingers in the dark.
The abandoned child within the psyche refuses to stay hidden any longer. She is rejecting the secrecy and the abuse.
And the conclusion is a fierce declaration of inherent worth. She is asking for favors.
She is demanding what she has earned simply by virtue of being human. Sweet sighs, safe houses, hands she can trust.
If you are listening to this, let those words settle in your nervous system.
You have earned safe houses. You have earned hands you can trust.
Those demands for safety and trust lead us to one of the most insidious psychological hurdles in the recovery process.
Yes, even when a survivor conceptually understands that healing is possible, and even when they feel that internal compulsion to grow, they often run headfirst into a cognitive wall.
It is the deeply entrenched belief that while healing is a beautiful reality for other people, they are the singular exception.
They look at stories of recovery and think, that is wonderful for them, but my situation is different.
I am too broken. My abuse was too severe. Or I am too fundamentally flawed to ever reach that peaceful shore.
The exception myth is a heavy, isolating cloak.
It convinces the survivor that they are terminally unique in their brokenness.
Unpacking why this belief is so ubiquitous requires looking at the architecture of self-blame.
A child's mind is egocentric. It believes it causes the events around it.
If abuse occurs, the child's mind often concludes, I must have done something to cause this, therefore I am bad.
Carrying that core belief into adulthood means you inherently believe you do not deserve the reward of peace.
You view your suffering as a justified sentence rather than an inflicted injury.
Beyond self-blame, the sheer duration of the suffering plays a massive role.
When an individual has lived in a state of hypervigilance or depression for decades, hope becomes a highly dangerous emotion.
Hoping for a different reality, only to be disappointed, feels neurologically equivalent to a physical assault.
It is safer to expect nothing.
Furthermore, the trauma does not exist in a vacuum. It intersects with systemic and practical barriers.
A mother might believe she cannot divert time or resources away from her children to focus on her own therapy.
The societal conditioning to put everyone else first becomes a sanctioned way to avoid the internal work.
We also have to acknowledge how identity and marginalization compound the exception myth.
Factors like age, race, religious background, physical or emotional disabilities.
Geographic isolation and financial insecurity.
They can all create an overwhelming sense that healing is an inaccessible luxury.
Society sends loud, persistent messages about whose pain matters and whose bodies are valuable.
When a survivor internalizes the message that society has already discarded them, it takes an extraordinary amount of defiance to claim their right to heal.
This brings us to a crucial demographic that often wrestles most fiercely with the exception myth: older survivors.
The cultural narrative implies that if you haven't sorted out your life by a certain age, it is too late.
But the lived experience of survivors shatters this timeline.
There is the profoundly moving story of Barbara Hamilton, who was 65 years old when she finally stepped onto the path of healing.
She had survived childhood molestation by her father.
She grew up in an era where such things were entirely unspeakable.
She got married, raised 6 children, and eventually welcomed grandchildren and great-grandchildren.
All while carrying the immense weight of her unacknowledged trauma.
To contextualize a 65-year silence is staggering.
She lived through the entirety of her adult milestones: wedding, pregnancies, raising teenagers, transitioning to an empty nest.
With that unresolved terror locked in her body.
What ultimately forced the lock was the devastating realization that the trauma was not contained to her own childhood.
It was intergenerational. She discovered that some of her children and grandchildren had also suffered abuse within the family structure.
The silence hadn't protected anyone. It had simply allowed the cycle to quietly continue.
The responsibility of facing that intergenerational reality is an immense burden.
Barbara was incredibly candid about the unique psychological landscape of beginning this work as an older woman.
She noted the societal invisibility that often accompanies aging, particularly for women.
When the broader culture already devalues your voice, the internalized voice of the victim agrees, saying, "Why bother now? No one is listening anyway."
She explained how her trauma had effectively gone underground during the decades she spent raising her family.
The sheer volume of labor required to manage a household of 6 children provided a socially acceptable, completely exhausting distraction.
Caretaking became her structural scaffolding.
But trauma is infinitely patient. It waits in the tissues and the neural pathways.
When her children grew up and left home, the noise of daily survival quieted down and the silence became deafening.
The distraction was gone.
She noted that as she became more alone, the insecurity and the memories surged back to the surface.
It is a stark reminder that trauma does not simply evaporate with the passage of time.
You cannot outweight it. You can push it down for half a century, but it will remain exactly as potent as the day it was buried.
Barbara recognized that she had spent 50 years simply acknowledging that the abuse happened, but spending every ounce of her energy pushing the emotional reality of it away.
Her message to anyone listening, regardless of age, is an urgent plea.
She said, don't wait, because it won't go away. It always comes back, and it gets harder.
She acknowledged the physical frailties of aging and the complex reality that an older survivor may never have the opportunity to confront their abuser,
as the abuser may have already passed away.
So the focus has to shift entirely inward.
Despite the sleepless nights, the physical toll, and the delayed confrontation, her assessment of the journey was triumphant.
To arrive at the age of 65 and declare, "I am finally alive," is a testament to the indestructible nature of the human spirit.
She articulated a profound relief in no longer having to pretend.
She realized she had been playing charades for her entire life, performing the role of a functional woman while hiding a terrified child.
Dropping the performance allowed her to finally feel real, a sensation she wouldn't trade for anything.
Her story dismantling the too late myth leads into one of the most evocative metaphors for the transformation of healing.
The source material compares the state of unhealed trauma to living entirely in a black and white movie.
When you are born into a black and white world, or when trauma strips the color from your vision early on, you have no frame of reference for anything else.
You adapt to the grayscale. You learn to navigate the shadows and the contrasts.
You might even build a highly successful, stable life within that monochrome reality.
The danger of the black and white world is that it feels safe.
There are no blinding, vibrant colors to overwhelm the senses. It is predictable.
Many survivors look at their monochrome lives and think, I'm doing okay. I have a job. I pay my bills. I function. This is good enough.
The absence of total crisis is mistaken for the presence of peace.
But the metaphor challenges this complacency by asking the survivor to imagine the first time they see Technicolor.
Or the first time they put on 3D glasses.
The sudden explosion of depth, vibrancy, and warmth is disorienting, but it reveals exactly how much of the world was previously hidden.
Moving from grayscale into Technicolor is the true promise of healing.
We want to say to you directly, the black and white landscape you have learned to navigate so expertly is not the entirety of your life.
There is a depth, a dimension, and a sensory richness waiting for you.
This concept directly challenges the survivor who uses their ability to cope as a reason to avoid the deeper work of healing.
Coping is a magnificent survival skill, but it is a tragic endpoint.
When a survivor says, "Why should I bother digging all this up? I've coped this far," the response must be compassionate but uncompromising.
Merely coping means you are utilizing a fraction of your humanity.
The text frames this beautifully and tragically. By settling for coping, you may be smothering an artist.
You are smothering the expansive, creative, joyful expressions of self that require a relaxed nervous system to flourish.
Healing is the process of unsmothering that potential.
It is the active recovery of the gifts, the talents, and the capacity for deep connection that the trauma forced you to pack away.
Unsmothering that potential, stepping into the technicolor world, requires walking through a highly volatile transitional space.
The reality of the emotional work is daunting. The brilliant novelist Toni Morrison, in her masterwork Beloved, wrote a line that perfectly encapsulates this physiological and emotional reality.
She wrote, "Anything dead coming back to life hurts."
That single sentence holds so much weight. It translates emotional pain into an understandable physiological process.
Think about sitting in an awkward position until your leg falls entirely asleep.
The blood flow is restricted, the nerves are compressed, and the limb goes completely numb.
There is no pain in the numbness. There is just a deadened weight.
But the moment you stand up and the blood rushes back into those starved tissues, the firing of the waking nerves, the intense pins and needles is excruciating.
The pain is not a sign that the leg is dying.
The pain is the literal sensation of life and circulation returning.
The emotional parallel is exact. The psychological numbness protected you from the immediate, overwhelming impact of the abuse.
But when you make the decision to heal, you are choosing to stand up.
You are choosing to let the emotional circulation return to the deadened areas of your psyche.
The tingling, the burning, the aching of those memories waking up is agonizing.
The therapeutic process will raise questions you spent your life avoiding, and it will demand answers that disrupt your current reality.
This disruption brings us to a profound, very practical fear, the fear of the void.
Many survivors rely heavily on the adaptations their trauma created.
Hypervigilance makes someone an exceptional project manager because they are constantly anticipating every possible disaster.
Emotional detachment makes someone a fiercely independent, unbreakable presence in a crisis.
These trauma responses forge a highly functioning, powerful persona.
The terrifying question is, what happens to my life if I let go of the very armor that has made me successful?
It is a profound risk. One survivor articulated this exact dilemma, noting that they had to give up a persona who was a viable, powerful, self-reliant human being.
They recognized that while their coping mechanisms were rooted in pain, they produced very positive, protective results in the real world.
Letting go of those defenses meant stepping into an absolute void.
They described the sensation of shedding that armor as feeling like a raw muscle walking around.
The imagery of a raw muscle is so visceral.
It implies moving through the world without any skin, without any protective barrier between your sensitive tissues and the abrasive reality of daily life.
Every interaction, every minor stressor, every memory suddenly makes direct contact with the raw nerve.
Validating this fear is essential. If you are listening to this and you are terrified of losing your tough exterior, your fear is entirely rational.
The armor is heavy and it is restrictive, but it is deeply familiar.
Stepping out of it leaves you fundamentally exposed to the elements.
And because you are exposed, the physical and social toll of this transition phase is immense.
The healing process does not happen in a vacuum. It wreaks havoc on your present reality.
Friendships that were built on your compliance or your emotional distance may shatter when you begin setting boundaries.
Marriages undergo seismic stress as the rules of engagement shift.
The cognitive load of processing trauma can make it incredibly difficult to focus at work, to study, or to maintain normal routines.
The nervous system is working overtime, which disrupts sleep architecture, alters appetite, and can result in uncontrollable periods of crying or sudden exhaustion.
It is a phase of profound destabilization.
A survivor noted that if they had known exactly how much the process would hurt and how deep the sadness would be, they never would have agreed to start.
But they followed that admission with a crucial truth. Once it begins, you cannot go back.
You cannot unremember.
The survivor realized that for years they had perfected the coping mechanisms for not hurting.
But when the pain finally arrived, they had zero coping mechanisms for processing the hurt.
They were an adult having to learn the emotional regulation of a toddler.
That lack of emotional vocabulary makes the process feel overwhelming.
To illustrate why retreat is impossible, a survivor named Laura offered a brilliant metaphor involving a plastic raincoat.
She described her suppressed memories as being like one of those emergency plastic raincoats that come vacuum-sealed in a tiny 2-inch package.
Under immense pressure, it is small, hard, and easily tucked away in a pocket.
But the moment you break the seal and unfold it, the plastic expands into a massive, unwieldy garment.
No matter how hard you try, there is absolutely no way to fold it back down and force it into that tiny square package.
The thermodynamics of the mind operate the same way.
The memories were compressed under the immense psychological pressure of survival.
Once the seal of denial is broken and the memories unfold into your conscious mind, They take up their true volume.
They sprawl across your daily life.
Because this expansion is so sudden and uncontrollable, survivors often experience a period where they feel intensely angry at the healing process itself.
Laura noted that she felt like a victim of her own recovery, screaming internally, "I didn't choose this. The abuse happened to me, and now this agonizing remembering is happening to me."
That anger is deeply valid. Healing often feels like being swept away in a violent current you never asked to enter.
In these moments of profound disorientation, we turn to the wisdom of the French author André Gide.
He wrote, "One does not discover new lands without consenting to lose sight of the shore for a very long time."
The healing journey requires leaving the familiar, predictable shore of your trauma and sailing out into the open, terrifying ocean of the unknown.
The open ocean is the liminal space.
The shore behind you, the numbness, the charades, the black and white world is gone.
But the new land, the technicolor life, the peace, the integration, is not yet visible on the horizon.
You are simply surrounded by deep water, storms, and uncertainty.
It is the most frightening phase of the journey because there is no tangible proof that the suffering will result in anything beautiful.
Surviving the open ocean requires recognizing that you cannot navigate it entirely on your own strength.
A survivor traversing this exact space shared their survival strategy.
They admitted to frequent desires to give up, to hide from reality, and to retreat to the dark.
They questioned whether the pain was worth the unknown destination.
But they kept going by utilizing a profound strategy. They lived on other people's hopes.
When their own faith in a better future evaporated, they borrowed the faith of their therapist, their support group, and their trusted friends.
Borrowing hope is a radical act of community.
If you are listening to this right now and you look at your own future and see nothing but dark water, that is okay.
You are not required to generate your own light in this exact moment.
You can borrow our hope.
You can lean on the faith of the survivors whose words we are sharing.
You can let a trained, compassionate professional hold the lantern and steer the boat while you simply focus on breathing and staying afloat.
You do not have to believe in the new land to keep moving toward it. You just have to trust the people who promise you it is there.
Trusting that the land is there allows you to endure the grief of the crossing.
Deciding to heal means making the terrifying choice to open yourself up to hope.
It means turning around to face the demons that have been chasing you your entire life and deciding you are done running.
There is a profound, exhausting relief in finally dropping the performance.
As one survivor realized, every time I accept my past and respect where I am in the present, I am giving myself a future.
Respect where I am in the present. That is the antidote to the shame of the raw muscle phase.
Respecting your present means offering yourself radical compassion when you cannot function at your normal capacity.
It means not judging yourself when the grief feels insurmountable.
To understand the physical weight of that grief and the resilience required to carry it, we turn to a poem by Ellen Bass called "The Thing Is."
It is a stunning meditation on surviving the darkest moments of the human experience.
Let's share that poem now. Notice the physical sensory weight of the words she chooses.
The thing is to love life, to love it even when you have no stomach for it, and everything you've held dear crumbles like burnt paper in your hands, your throat filled with the silt of it.
When grief sits with you, its tropical heat thickening the air, heavy as water, more fit for gills than lungs.
When grief weights you like your own flesh, only more of it, an obesity of grief, you think, how can a body withstand this?
Then you hold life like a face between your palms, a plain face, no charming smile, no violet eyes, and you say, yes, I will take you, I will love you again.
The imagery of that poem bypasses the intellect and lands directly in the body.
Everything you've held dear crumbles like burnt paper in your hands, your throat filled with the silt of it.
It evokes the absolute devastation of the old structures falling away. You can practically taste the ash of the life you thought you understood.
And her description of grief is revolutionary. She doesn't describe it as a passing sadness.
She describes it as an atmospheric shift, a tropical heat thickening the air, heavy as water, more fit for gills than lungs.
The air itself becomes unbreathable. And then she uses that unforgettable phrase, an obesity of grief.
It captures the sheer physical mass of sorrow.
Grief is not just a feeling. It is an entity that attaches itself to your bones, making every movement, every breath, an act of supreme exertion.
When a survivor is in the thick of this raw unpacking phase, carrying that obesity of grief, the question she asks is the only logical response.
How can a body withstand this?
Do you survive the ravaging force? How do we keep sailing when the boat is taking on water and the shore is nowhere in sight?
The answer she provides is not a fairy tale. She doesn't promise that life will suddenly become effortless.
Or that the memories will magically disappear?
She offers a vision of radical, gritty acceptance. You hold life like a plain face between your palms. No charming smile, no violet eyes.
It is not a perfect life. It is scarred by the abuse. It is tired from the journey.
It is missing the easy innocence that others might take for granted.
But you look at the reality of your life, with all its messy, painful history, and you make the conscious, deliberate choice to say, yes, I will take you, I will love you again.
That active, ongoing choice to love a damaged but deeply real life is the ultimate victory over trauma.
It is the journey from mere survival to actual, vibrant existence.
To help ground these vast emotional concepts into your daily reality, we have distilled the wisdom of these survivors into 10 practical applications and takeaways.
These are tools you can carry with you as you navigate your own waters. We will alternate sharing these 10 points.
Number 1, acknowledge your coping skills without shame.
Recognize that the walls you built, the numbness you relied on, and the distance you kept were brilliant, necessary survival strategies.
They kept you alive. You can thank them for their service and gently begin the work of letting them go to build healthier, more flexible boundaries.
Number 2, notice the simple joys.
Healing allows your nervous system to slowly return to the present moment. You don't have to force massive joy right away.
Practice grounding yourself by finding one simple sensory experience today. The warmth of a cup of tea, the texture of a blanket, or the sound of the wind, and allow yourself to truly feel it without drifting into the past or the future.
Number 3, listen to your life's catalysts.
Pay close attention to the friction points in your life. Whether it is a conflict in a relationship, a sudden surge of protective anger, or an unexplainable physical exhaustion.
View these not as failures, but as signals from your own biology. Your spirit is nudging you, signaling that you are strong enough to begin the work.
Number 4, accept your deservingness.
Actively challenge the not me belief. Remind yourself that everyone deserves to heal, and you are not the exception to that rule.
The belief that you are uniquely broken is a symptom of the trauma, not a reflection of your true worth. You have earned a life of safety and peace.
Number 5, challenge the too late myth.
The human brain retains its neuroplasticity until the end of life. Whether you are 25 or 85, healing can restore your connection to yourself.
It is never too late to stop playing charades, to lay down the heavy burden of keeping the secret, and to finally feel real in your own skin.
Number 6, expect the raw muscle phase.
Normalize the intense vulnerability that accompanies the early stages of recovery.
If you feel sad, exhausted, or unable to function at your usual high-achieving capacity, remind yourself that this is not a regression.
The pain of the nerves waking up is a profound sign of life returning. Offer yourself immense grace during this destabilization.
Number 7, unpack the raincoat safely.
Accept that the memories, once unfolded, will take up space you cannot unremember.
Because this expansion can be overwhelming, ensure you do not unpack it alone.
Seek out trusted trauma-informed hands therapists, support groups, or safe friends who can help you hold the volume and weight of your history.
Number 8, borrow hope when necessary.
When the grief feels too heavy and the destination is out of sight, release the pressure to be constantly optimistic.
It is a completely valid survival strategy to live on the faith and hope of others. Let someone else believe in the beauty of your future until you have the strength to see it for yourself.
Number 9, embrace the technicolor.
Refuse to settle for a life of mere coping in a black and white world.
Acknowledge the artist, the creator, and the joyful person inside you that the trauma smothered. Give yourself permission to strive for a life of full expression, deep connection, and vibrant color.
And finally, number 10, hold your life gently.
When you are sitting with the massive weight of your grief, practice holding your life with profound compassion.
Look at the reality of your journey honestly, without demanding perfection or immediate resolution, and find the quiet courage to say yes to loving your life again.
Those steps require an immense daily bravery.
As we bring this deep dive to a close, we want to leave you with one final thought to mull over as you step back into your day.
We talked about consenting to lose sight of the shore and the terror of drifting through the raw, difficult waters of remembering.
But consider this. When you finally weather the storm and the fog begins to lift on the horizon, What beautiful, undiscovered land of your own true, vibrant self is waiting for you on the other side.
What a profound vision to hold on to. Thank you for your courage today.
Thank you for choosing to engage with your own healing. We want to remind you once more, you are safe, your pain is valid, and you are never, ever alone on this journey.